She's just a useless black wife riding my coattails. My husband, Theodore, snarled across the crowded conference room, his hand possessively gripping his assistant's waist. Everything she has, she owes to me. The entire office party froze. Then his boss stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. That useless wife you're trashing. She's the billionaire who owns this building, this company, and signs both our paychecks. Before we get into this absolutely wild story, if you've ever been undervalued, dismissed, or betrayed by someone who should have been protecting you, smash that subscribe button right now. What you're about to hear will shock you, inspire you, and remind you why you should never apologize for your success. Trust me, you won't want to miss a single moment of this. Now let me take you back to the beginning, to the moment my life looked perfect on the outside but was crumbling on the inside. My name is Kendra, and I have to tell you about the night everything I thought I knew about my marriage shattered into a million pieces. But to really understand what happened, you need to know how I ended up there in the first place, standing in that ballroom watching my husband destroy us both with his own words. 4 years ago, I married Theodore. He was everything I thought I wanted. Confident, well-spoken, ambitious, driven. He worked as a senior consultant at Preston & Associates, a prestigious consulting firm downtown. When we met at a networking event, he was immediately drawn to what he called my quiet power. I ran my own private equity firm, Blackwood Capital. I'd built it from nothing after spending a decade in corporate finance, learning the game, making the right connections, and eventually striking out on my own. By the time I met Theodore, I'd already accumulated a portfolio worth hundreds of millions. But I didn't advertise it. No flashy lifestyle posts on Instagram. No name on buildings. No press releases. I operated in the day. Shadows of wealth, making moves quietly, protecting my privacy, protecting my peace. That's how old money operates. And I'd learned to move like them even though I'd earned every penny myself. Theodore seemed to admire that about me at first. He'd brag to his friends about how smart I was, how I'd made something of myself. I loved that he saw me. Really saw me. Or at least I thought he did. We got married in a small ceremony, just close friends and family. I paid for most of it, but he didn't know that. I'd learned early to let men feel like providers, even when they weren't. I'd funnel money into our joint account, and he'd pay our bills from there, chest puffed out, feeling like the man of the house. I didn't need the credit. I just wanted him to feel secure, to feel like an equal partner. That was my first mistake. The first year of marriage was beautiful. We traveled, we laughed, we planned our future together. But somewhere around the 18-month mark, things shifted. Theodore got promoted to director level. His salary jumped from $95,000 to $150,000 a year, and suddenly he started walking taller, talking bigger. He'd come home and spend hours telling me about his day, his deals, his brilliant strategies. When I'd try to share something about my work, he'd nod absently and say something like, "That's nice, babe, but have I told you about the Johnson account I just closed?" At first, I told myself he was just excited, passionate about his career. But then the comments started getting sharper. "Must be nice to work from home in your yoga pants." Or, "Some of us actually have to show up to an office and deal with real pressure." Each comment was a paper cut. Small enough to ignore individually, but enough of them and you start bleeding. I was managing a $200 million portfolio from my home office. I was on video calls with CEOs and venture capitalists. I was making decisions that affected hundreds of employees, across multiple companies. But Theodore started treating my work like it was a hobby, like I was playing house with Monopoly money, while he was out there in the real world making things happen. His friends stopped asking me about my career. When they'd come over for dinner, Theodore would introduce me as, "This is Kendra, my wife," like I didn't have an identity beyond being his accessory. And when someone would politely ask what I did, he'd wave his hand dismissively and say, "Oh, she does some investing from home. Keeps her busy, keeps me busy. Like I was a housewife looking for something to occupy my time between grocery shopping and watching daytime television. Meanwhile, I was paying 75% of our bills. Our mortgage on the 4-bedroom house in the suburbs. Me. Both car payments. Me. Insurance, utilities, groceries. Everything except his student loans. Me. But I let him think he was carrying the weight because I wanted him to feel like a man. I wanted him to feel proud of himself. I wanted him to feel like he mattered. Looking back, I realize I was making myself smaller so he could feel bigger. I was dimming my own light so he wouldn't feel like he was standing in my shadow. That was my second mistake. Things got worse over the last year. Theodore became obsessed with status, with perception, with how things looked to the outside world. He bought an expensive watch he couldn't afford. Started wearing designer suits that maxed out his credit cards. He wanted everyone to see him as successful, powerful, important, and I think, somewhere deep down, he started to resent that his success was manufactured while mine was real. He stopped touching me the way he used to, stopped looking at me like I was beautiful, stopped asking about my day, my dreams, my goals. We became roommates who shared a bed, nothing more. I suggested couples counseling twice. The first time, he laughed and said we didn't need it. The second time, he got angry and accused me of trying to make him feel inadequate. I'm not the one with the problem, Kendra, he'd said. Maybe if you actually contributed more to this relationship, instead of just hiding in your office all day, things would be better. I didn't tell him that I'd just closed a deal that netted me $12 million. I didn't tell him that I'd been headhunted by 3 different firms that month, all offering me partnerships. I didn't tell him any of it because I knew it would make things worse. So I stayed quiet and hoped things would get better. They didn't. Then came the invitation. Preston and Associates was hosting their annual gala at the Grandview Hotel. It was their biggest event of the year. Black tie, open bar, all the partners and senior staff showing off for each other and the clients. Theodore mentioned it one evening while we were eating dinner in silence, both scrolling through our phones.
My office gala is in 3 weeks.
You should probably come. You should probably come. Not, I'd love for you to be there. Not, please come and support me. Just, you should probably come. Like it was a chore for both of us. Of course I'll be there, I said, forcing brightness into my voice. It sounds like it'll be a great event. He barely looked up from his phone. Just dress appropriately. These are important people. I need you to make a good impression. I wanted to ask him if he realized he was talking to someone who'd sat in boardrooms with billionaires, who'd negotiated deals that would make his biggest client contracts look like pocket change. But I didn't. I just said, I'll find something nice. The night of the gala, I pulled out all the stops. I wore a midnight blue gown that hugged every curve, diamonds at my throat and wrists, my hair swept up in an elegant twist. I looked in the mirror and saw a woman who belonged in those rooms, who'd earned her place at any table. When I came downstairs, Theodore glanced at me and said, "That'll work." Not, "You look stunning." Not, "I'm lucky to have you on my arm." Just, "That'll work." We drove to the hotel separately because he had to go early to help set up. I arrived fashionably late, walking into that ballroom alone, my head held high even though my heart was heavy. The space was magnificent, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, crystal chandeliers, tables draped in ivory linens with centerpieces that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Everyone was dressed to impress, networking, laughing, performing success for each other. I spotted Theodore immediately. He was standing near the bar with a group of his colleagues, and draped on his arm was Emma. I'd heard about Emma. She was his new assistant, young and ambitious, hired 6 months ago. Theodore mentioned her constantly. Emma did this. Emma said that. Emma has such brilliant ideas. I'd pushed down the jealousy, told myself I was being paranoid, told myself that Theodore would never. But seeing them together, seeing the way his hand rested on her lower back, seeing the way she looked up at him with adoration in her eyes, seeing the way he leaned down to whisper something in her ear that made her laugh, my stomach turned to ice. I walked over, my heels clicking against the marble floor. Theodore saw me approaching, and something flickered across his face. Annoyance, maybe, or guilt. "There you are," he said, his voice flat. "Everyone, this is Kendra, my wife. Not. This is Kendra, the love of my life. Not. This is Kendra, an incredible businesswoman. Just. This is Kendra, my wife." Like I was a title. Not a person. The group mumbled polite greetings. Emma looked me up and down with this tight little smile, sizing up the competition. "You must be so proud of Theodore," she purred, her hand still touching his arm. "He's absolutely incredible. This company would fall apart without him." "I am proud," I said evenly, even though something dark was twisting in my chest. "He works very hard." "It must be so nice though," Emma continued, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "to not have to worry about work yourself. To just get to relax at home, while Theodore handles all the real responsibilities." Before I could respond, Theodore jumped in, his words like daggers. "She does work, sort of. It's not really a career, more like a little hobby. Keeps her occupied during the day." A hobby. My multi-million-dollar business was a hobby. I felt my face get hot, felt my hands start to shake, but I forced myself to smile. "That's an interesting way to describe it," I said carefully. "Well, it's not like you're building something real," Theodore said, and he was looking at his colleagues now, not at me. "Not like what we do here. This is real business, real pressure, real stakes." One of his colleagues, an older man named Richard, looked uncomfortable. "I'm sure your wife's work is very impressive, Theodore." "Sure, if you consider sitting at home in sweatpants impressive. I mean, I love her, but let's be real. She's not exactly out here changing the world." I felt tears burning behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "Not here. Not in front of these people." I excused myself quietly, murmuring something about needing to use the restroom, and walked away before my voice could break. In the bathroom, I stared at myself in the mirror. The diamonds at my throat suddenly felt like a collar. The expensive dress felt like a costume. I'd worked so hard to build something real, something meaningful, and the man who was supposed to love me had just dismissed it all like it was nothing. Like I was nothing. I thought about leaving, getting in my car and driving away from this whole mess. But something inside me, something stubborn and angry and hurt, made me stay. I reapplied my lipstick, straightened my shoulders, and walked back out into that ballroom with my head high. The next hour was torture. I watched Theodore hold court with his colleagues and clients, Emma, never more than a few inches from his side. I watched him light up when he talked to her, watched him laugh at her jokes, watched him touch her arm, her shoulder, her back. Things he hadn't done with me in months. I stood on the sidelines, nursing a glass of champagne. Invisible. Then Emma, the CEO of Preston and Associates, arrived. Emma was a legend in the consulting world. She'd built the firm from a small startup to a powerhouse with offices in 12 cities. She was brilliant, ruthless, and commanded respect the moment she entered a room. Everyone straightened up, conversations shifted, people positioned themselves to be noticed. Theodore immediately inserted himself into Emma's circle, desperate to be seen, to be remembered. He was always chasing the next promotion, the next opportunity to climb higher. Emma made her rounds, gracious but calculating, assessing everyone she encountered with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Our eyes met across the room. She gave me a small nod, recognition flickering in her gaze. Of course she knew who I was. We'd been in talks for months about a potential partnership, about Blackwood Capital providing funding for Preston and Associates' expansion into Asia. We'd been negotiating the terms, working through the details. But it wasn't public knowledge yet. Theodore had no idea. Emma made her way through the crowd, and eventually, she ended up near Theodore's group. He immediately launched into performance mode, laughing too loud, trying too hard, desperate for her attention and approval. I was standing a few feet away when I heard Emma's assistant say something about Theodore's wife. Theodore, emboldened by the 4 cocktails he'd consumed, decided this was his moment to be the center of attention. "Oh, my wife?" he said loudly, gesturing vaguely in my direction. "Yeah, she's around here somewhere, probably at the dessert table or something." His colleagues laughed, but it was awkward, uncomfortable. Theodore didn't seem to notice, or care. He kept going, his voice getting louder, his words getting meaner. "You know what's funny?" he said, looking around to make sure everyone was listening. "Everyone thinks I married well because my wife is beautiful, and she is, don't get me wrong. But between you and me, I'm the one carrying this relationship. I'm the one with the real job, the real income, the real future. She just sits at home all day pretending to work on her computer." The group had gone quiet now, people exchanging uncomfortable glances. Emma's assistant, a young woman whose name I didn't catch, looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. But Emma herself just watched, her expression unreadable. I started to walk away. I couldn't listen to this anymore. I couldn't stand there and let him humiliate me like this. But then Theodore's voice rose even louder, stopping me in my tracks. "Honestly, I don't know why I even brought her tonight. She doesn't understand business. She doesn't contribute anything meaningful. She's basically just arm candy, except lately she's not even trying to look the part." My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might break through my chest. People were openly staring now, some at Theodore, some at me. I turned slowly, my eyes meeting his across the space between us. For a moment, something flickered in his expression. Maybe recognition of what he was doing. Maybe regret. But then Emma, his assistant, touched his arm, leaned in close, and whispered something that made him smile. Whatever momentary clarity he'd had vanished. "Let's be honest," he said, his voice carrying across the entire ballroom now. His arm slipped around Emma's waist, pulling her close. "I'm married to a useless black wife who contributes absolutely nothing. No income, no ambition, no drive. She's dead weight I've been carrying for 4 years. Everything she has, every nice thing she wears, every comfort she enjoys, she owes to me. She's living off my success while I'm out here, building something real." The room went completely silent. 200 people stopped talking, stopped moving, stopped breathing. Every eye in that ballroom was either on Theodore or on me. I felt the world tilt sideways, felt my chest constrict so tight I couldn't breathe. He'd used my race as a weapon. He'd reduced me to a stereotype, to something worthless, to something less than human. I stood there frozen, unable to process what was happening. This was my husband, the man who'd promised to love me, cherish me, protect me, the man who'd stood in front of our families and friends and vowed to be my partner, my equal, my safe place to land. And he'd just destroyed me in front of all these people, used the color of my skin to demean me, to devalue me, to dismiss everything I'd built and everything I was. Tears were streaming down my face before I even realized I was crying. My hands were shaking, my vision was blurring. I wanted to run, to disappear, to cease to exist. But I couldn't move. I was paralyzed by the shock, by the betrayal, by the sheer cruelty of what he'd just done. Then Emma, the CEO, stepped forward. She walked slowly, deliberately, her heels clicking against the marble floor. The crowd parted for her automatically, everyone sensing that something significant was about to happen. She stopped directly in front of Theodore, so close he had to look down to meet her eyes. "Theodore," Emma said, her voice calm but cold as winter. I need to ask you something, and I need you to think very carefully before you answer. Theodore blinked, suddenly looking uncertain. The alcohol fog seemed to be clearing just enough for him to realize he might be in trouble. Of course, Emma. Anything. Do you know who I report to? Emma asked. Theodore's brow furrowed. You're the CEO. You report to the board of directors, right? One person on that board, Emma corrected. One person who holds the majority share of this company. One person who ultimately controls every major decision we make, every expansion we plan, every hire we approve. Do you know who that person is? I felt my heart start to pound for a different reason now. Theodore looked genuinely confused, looking around at his colleagues for help. Emma's assistant had taken several steps away from him, her face pale. The crowd pressed closer, sensing blood in the water. I honestly don't know, Theodore admitted. Some investor, I guess? Someone from the board? That someone, Emma said, turning to look directly at me, is your wife. Kendra is the founder and CEO of Blackwood Capital, the private equity firm that acquired controlling interest in Preston and Associates 18 months ago. She owns 58% of this company. She's not just my boss. She's your boss. She's everyone's boss here, including the partners you've been desperately trying to impress all night. I watched Theodore's face change in slow motion. Watched confusion turn to disbelief. Disbelief turned to horror. Horror turned to absolute panic. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The color drained from his face until he looked almost gray. Emma's assistant, the woman who'd been hanging on his arm, had disappeared entirely into the crowd. That's not, Theodore stammered, shaking his head. That's impossible. She works from home. She doesn't. She can't. I would have known. Emma pulled out her tablet, pulled up a document, and showed it to Theodore. These are the acquisition papers. Here's the signature on the shareholder agreements. Here are the quarterly reports she reviews. Here are the profit distributions she approves. Your wife doesn't just own this company, Theodore. She's the reason this company exists in the form it does today. Her capital saved us during the recession. Her strategies opened our international markets. Her connections brought in half of our major clients. The crowd erupted in whispers, people frantically pulling out their phones, searching my name, finding articles about W's. Blackwood Capital. Finding profiles of successful black businesswomen, finding the pieces of my life I'd kept private. I saw recognition dawning on face after face, saw respect, saw awe, saw embarrassment for Theodore. No, Theodore said again, his voice breaking. No, you're lying. This is some kind of joke. Some kind of revenge for what? I found my voice finally, and it came out stronger than I expected. Cold and clear and steady. For calling me useless, for humiliating me in front of everyone, for using my race as an insult, for betraying our marriage with your assistant? I didn't, Theodore started, reaching for me, but I stepped back away from his touch. You've been living in a house I bought, I said, my voice rising now, driving cars I paid for, wearing clothes I funded, living a lifestyle I provided. I paid 75% of our bills, Theodore. I let you think you were the provider because I wanted you to feel strong. I wanted you to feel secure. I didn't need the credit for supporting us. I just needed you to love me, to respect me, to see me as your equal partner. The tears were flowing freely now, but I didn't care anymore. Let them see. Let everyone see what he'd done. If I had known, baby, please, Theodore begged, his voice cracking. If you had told me, I never would have. If you had known I had money, you would have treated me differently, I finished for him. But that's exactly the problem. Theodore. You should have treated me with respect regardless of what I had or didn't have. You should have valued me as your wife, as your partner, as a human being, not because I'm rich, but because I deserved your love and loyalty. I pulled off my wedding ring. The diamond caught the light from the chandeliers, sending rainbow reflections across the walls. I'd chosen this ring myself, paid for it myself, and let Theodore propose to me with it like it was his gift. I set it down on the table beside us, right next to Theodore's anotherman, half-empty cocktail glass. We're done, I said simply. My lawyer will contact you about the divorce proceedings. Kendra, no, please, Theodore said, and he was crying now too, reaching for me desperately. I made a mistake. I was drunk. I didn't mean any of it. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. I'll do anything. Yes, you did mean it, I said quietly. Drunk words are sober thoughts. You meant every single word. You just didn't think there would be consequences. You didn't think I had the power to walk away. I turned to Emma. I'll need a full review of personnel in Theodore's department. I want to know who else has been creating a hostile work environment. I want to know who knew about him and his assistant and said nothing. And I want recommendations for replacements. Emma nodded, professional and efficient. I'll have that report on your desk by Monday morning. I looked around the ballroom one last time, 200 faces staring back at me. Some shocked, some impressed, some embarrassed for themselves, for their own assumptions about who I was and what I represented. I straightened my shoulders, lifted my chin, and walked toward the exit. Kendra, please, Theodore called after me, his voice echoing across the silent room. Don't do this. Don't leave me. I love you. I didn't turn around, didn't acknowledge him, didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. I just kept walking, one foot in front of the other, my heels clicking against marble, until I was out of that ballroom, out of that hotel, out of that chapter of my life. That was 8 months ago. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks ago. Theodore tried everything to fix it. Flowers delivered to my office daily. Letters, emails, showing up at my house. He sent his mother, his friends, even his therapist to try to convince me to take him back. But some things, once broken, can't be fixed. Some betrayals are too deep, cut too close to bone. I've come out publicly now as the CEO of Blackwood Capital. Turns out I actually love the visibility. I love using my platform to mentor other women, especially Black women who've been told they're not enough, who've been told to make themselves smaller, who've been told their ambitions are too big and their dreams are unrealistic. I've started a foundation that provides capital to women-owned businesses. I've been featured in Forbes, Fortune, and Bloomberg. I've given keynote speeches about building wealth while protecting your peace. I'm happier than I've ever been. I'm dating someone new now, someone who knew exactly who I was before our first coffee date, someone who Googled my name and showed up nervous but excited, someone who celebrates my success instead of resenting it, someone who brags about me to his friends. The way Theodore used to before his insecurity turned him into someone I didn't recognize. Theodore left Preston and Associates 3 months ago. Couldn't handle the whispers, the stares, the constant reminder of what he'd thrown away. Last I heard, he moved to another city, took a job at a much smaller firm for significantly less money. Emma, his assistant, was let go the week after the gala. Turns out she'd been sleeping with 3 different married executives at the company. HR had a field day cleaning house. I don't wish Theodore harm. I don't spend my days thinking about revenge or hoping he suffers. I just wish him far away from me, living his own life, learning from his mistakes. I hope he grows. I hope he heals. I hope he never treats another woman the way he treated me. The biggest lesson I learned through all of this: never make yourself smaller to make someone else comfortable. Never dim your light because someone else can't handle the brightness. Never hide who you are or what you've accomplished because you're afraid of making someone feel inadequate. The right person will celebrate you, will lift you up, will stand beside you as an equal partner and never try to diminish your shine. And never ever let anyone use your race, your gender, your background, or anything else about you as a reason to diminish your worth. You are valuable because you exist, because you're breathing, because you're trying. Your worth is inherent and unchangeable, regardless of who recognizes it or validates it. I'm Kendra. I'm a Black woman. I'm a billionaire. I'm powerful, brilliant, and I built everything I have with my own 2 hands and my own brilliant mind. And I'm done apologizing for any of it. I'm done making myself smaller. I'm done dimming my light. I'm here, I'm loud, and I'm never going back to silence. So that's my story. I went from being called a useless Black wife to reclaiming my power, my voice, and my peace. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button right now and subscribe for more real stories about overcoming disrespect, reclaiming your power, and refusing to accept anything less than you deserve. Drop a comment below telling me what you would have done in my situation. Would you have revealed yourself earlier? Would you have said something different? I want to hear from you. And remember this: your worth doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see it. You are valuable, powerful, and deserving of love and respect. Always. Don't ever let anyone convince you otherwise. Now go out there and show the world exactly who you are. Be loud about it. Be proud of it. And never apologize for taking up space. Until next time, stay strong, stay blessed, stay powerful, and never let anyone dim your light. You were born to shine.